Who is the Valonqar? Cersei is obsessed with the prophecy from her youth about who will kill her, and thinks she knows who it is, but she usually isn't the best of judges, so who is the Valonqar? Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to Deep Geek. On this channel we dive deep into George R. R. Martin's world of ice and fire, as well as other great fantasy worlds, like The Lord of the Rings and The Witcher. Welcome. Way back in the year 276 AC, a 10-years-old Cersei, accompanied by her bedmaid Maura Heatherspoon, went to see a woods witch near Lannisport, who could apparently tell the future. She wanted to know if she would marry Prince Rhaegar, whether they would have children, and more. She had been told that that was what her father was trying to arrange. After taking some of her blood, the woods witch, known as Maggie the Frog, answered her questions and gave her answers that she didn't really like. She told her she wouldn't marry the prince, but would marry the king, that she would have 3 children, though he would have 16, and then that she would be cast down by another, younger and more beautiful than her. And then there's this, firstly about her 3 children. The old woman was not done with her, however. "Gold shall be their crowns and gold their shrouds," she said, "and when your tears have drowned you, the Valonqar shall wrap his hands about your pale white throat and choke the life from you." What is a Valonqar? Some monster? The Golden Girl did not like that foretelling. At which point Maura interrupts, asking about her future, so we don't get an answer to what or who exactly the Valonqar is. What we do know is that the prophecy says that the Valonqar will kill Cersei. Cersei did not know what Valonqar meant when the prophecy actually happened, but she clearly took it seriously. This was the person prophesied to kill her, and although maybe she wanted to treat it as just a joke, the other things that Maggie the Frog had said started to come true. In particular, Maggie the Frog had said, in response to Maura asking if Jaime would marry her, "Worms will have your maidenhead. Your death is here tonight, little one. Can you smell her breath? She is very close." Cersei pushed her down a well that very night. But beyond that, we can see that the Woods Witch spoke truth. Cersei did not marry Prince Rhaegar, but she did marry King Robert. And he did seemingly have 16 children and her 3. Even the line about "gold shall be their crowns and gold their shrouds" suddenly felt real to Cersei in A Feast for Crows. Joffrey had become king and then died, a gold crown and a gold shroud, and then Tommen took over with a gold crown. And we, the readers, know that there are plots afoot in Dorne to make Myrcella, Cersei's other child, a queen too. If all of that had come true, then what about the rest? Cersei fixates a bit on the prophecy about the younger, more beautiful person who would cast her down and take all she holds dear, seemingly deciding that this must be Marjorie. There's a whole other video there about who that might be, because she's probably not right about that. But for obvious reasons, Cersei is most concerned about the identity of who might kill her, and what Valonqar might mean. We get a taste of her thinking in A Feast for Crows. She has taken to sharing her bed with Taena Merryweather, and wakes up from a nightmare next to her. Was it the dwarf again? Why does he frighten you so, this silly little man? He is going to kill me. It was foreseen when I was 10. I wanted to know who I would marry. But she said... She? The Magi. The words came tumbling out of her. She could still hear Maura Heatherspoon insisting that if they never spoke about the prophecies, they would not come true. She was not so silent in the well, though. She screamed and shouted. "Tyrion is the Valonqar," she said. "Don't you use that word in Mere? It's High Valyrian. It means little brother." She had asked Septa Saranella about the word. So Cersei asked her Septa about what Valonqar meant and was told that it means little brother. Her little brother was going to kill her. That explains a lot about why she treats Tyrion like she does. He is her little brother, after all, in more than one sense of the term. Now, anyone who has read A Feast for Crows will know that Cersei is not the most reliable of POV characters. She gets an idea into her head and won't be shaken from it, regardless of how objectively true it may or may not be. Which, of course, leads easily into one of George R. R. Martin's favourite writing techniques. The truth or otherwise of the prophecy is actually less important to the plot than what people believe it to mean. Regardless of whether the prophecy is actually about Tyrion, Cersei believes it to be, and that is what drives the action. She immediately decides that it must have been him who poisoned Joffrey, so he gets arrested, tried, and there's the trial by combat. Oberyn's death, Tyrion escaping and killing his father, all directly the result of Cersei's belief that Tyrion is the Valonqar, and not to be trusted. If she'd been just as vociferous that the Tyrells or, Littlefinger had killed her son, we would have had a very different story. But Cersei did believe that Tyrion did it, and that he was and is the Valonqar. Her logic is clear, but is he? Well, let's start with the actual words of the prophecy, because I suspect that George R. R. Martin has done a bit of a fun rug pull here. Because the very chapter before we get Cersei thinking about the Valonqar, we get Maester Aemon's last words of wisdom, part of which is a rather nerdy realisation about the fluidity of masculine and feminine nouns in the Valyrian language, though we'll come back to that in a moment, and how generations of people had interpreted the phrase, the prince that was promised, as purely in the masculine form, whereas, well, this is what he says. What fools we were, who thought ourselves so wise. The error crept in from the translation. Dragons are neither male nor female. Bath saw the truth of that. But now one and now the other, as changeable as flame. That has big implications for who the prince that was promised, or Azor Ahai Reborn, might be. But for us now, that also calls into question whether the Valonqar necessarily means little brother, as Cersei thinks, or whether it might also mean little sister. Does the fact that the High Valyrian word or words for prince that was promised also mean princess that was promised, further mean that the word Valonqar might be translated as little sister as well as little brother? I know we're getting into quite detailed linguistic issues here, but this is quite a nerdy channel, so I'm going to assume you're still with me. And it brings me on to George R. R. Martin's relationship with language. He is clearly a master of the English language, but he is not an academic of language per se, nor does he pretend to be. He openly acknowledges this as a big difference between himself and Tolkien, his literary hero. As he says, Tolkien was a philologist and an Oxford Don, and could spend decades laboriously inventing Elvish in all its detail. I, alas, am only a hard-working science fiction and fantasy novelist, and I don't have his gift for languages. That is to say, I have not actually created a Valyrian language. The best I could do was try to sketch in each of the chief tongues of my imaginary world in broad strokes, and give them each their characteristic sounds and spellings. When it comes to High Valyrian, George R. R. Martin actually only created 7 original words and has provided no additional input to David Peterson, who expanded it out into a whole language for the TV show and did an excellent job. And David Peterson has confirmed that Maester Aemon quote we looked at doesn't actually impact on the interpretation of the word Valonqar. This is what he said on his blog. Many have taken this quote as evidence that High Valyrian is a language without grammatical gender. It proves nothing of the kind. All this says about High Valyrian is that the word originally used in the prophecy that was translated as prince in common, i.e. English, can refer to either gender, e.g. the way scientist can refer to either gender in English. Maester Aemon here is commenting on how the assumption, given the context, was that the one prophesied must be male, because this is something that is presumably common in Westeros society, but crucially, that it need not be so. That is all this quote is evidence of. It says nothing whatever about the gender system of High Valyrian. As far as Peterson is concerned, Valonqar means little brother, and there is a different word, Hadar, his creation, that means little sister. Although he hasn't commented publicly, George R. R. Martin will be aware and has not contradicted this in any way. So although it is a fun theory, suggesting that Valonqar might actually refer to a little sister because all Valyrian nouns are gender-free, it seems to be incorrect. We can't be 100% on this because George R. R. Martin hasn't formally confirmed it, but the man who invented the language is pretty clear in his views. We should probably acknowledge one more linguistic issue, though. Maggie the Frog talked about the Valonqar, not your Valonqar. So presumably it's a generic little brother or sister, not specifically Cersei's younger brother. So with all that in mind, who might be the Valonqar? Simply put, who will kill Cersei? Although Cersei remains as unreliable a narrator as we could imagine, Tyrion does have to be on the list. We'll have to see where his character growth takes him in the next couple of books, but by the end of A Dance with Dragons, he still thinks often that he should kill Cersei. And he has already killed his father, remember, and orders the murder of several other non-family members. Tyrion is far from an innocent character in the books, and he is Cersei's little brother. Most fans' working assumption is that he will return to Westeros as Daenerys' right-hand man, and that as Daenerys' star waxes, Cersei's will wane, so maybe he will have the power to order her death, or do it himself. Someone else who has said that they want Cersei dead is Arya. She is the little sister in the Stark family, and Cersei is on her kill list. Whenever she does return to Westeros, killing Cersei will be quite literally on her to-do list, and there's plenty of foreshadowing with cats and the Red Keep that I'll get into in another video. And as I know you are wondering about the little brother, little sister thing we talked about a moment ago, she has the ability to change her face and appearance. Might she masquerade as a man? Perhaps even someone like Jaime? Well, that takes us even further down the rabbit hole. For now, let's just say that Arya is definitely on the list of suspects. Other little brothers also come to mind as we dig deeper. Years ago, this grey area and I discussed on this channel the idea that Euron might be the Valonqar. He is a younger brother, after all. Some have suggested Tommen. I see it because Maggie mentions the Valonqar in response to Cersei's question about how many children she would have, and her tears at their deaths are said to drown her. But if we are to take Maggie's prophecy accurately, it seems that her 3 children must die first. 3 crowns and 3 shrouds, then the Valonqar. So Tommen will be dead by then. But what if he's brought back by Qyburn, say, as a white? Yes, I suppose, but this does seem to be a bit stretching the prophecy. Maybe George R. R. Martin will go that way, but I'll need to be convinced. Cersei's blind spot, of course, is that she has more than one little brother. Jaime and her are twins, but she emerged before him, and when you start to dig into it, you can actually build quite a strong case against Jaime from the clues George R. R. Martin has already given us. To start with, they are both convinced that they will die together. Cersei thinks that we will leave this world together as we once came into it, and Jaime that I cannot die while Cersei lives. We will die together as we were born together. We should always be cautious about placing weight on where the TV show went, and there her cause of death was falling masonry, not someone wrapping their hands around her neck and strangling her, but personally I find it noticeable that Jaime was with her at the end. It does seem likely that there will be some kind of reunion in the books as well, and they will die together. Will it be a loving reunion or something more complex? Jaime's arc throughout his chapters so far has been to distance himself from his family, to take him to a place where he wants to define himself as a person on his own, not by who he was or what his family name is. And he's already reached the point in his penultimate chapter so far where he can ignore Cersei's passionate begging of him in a letter to protect her in a trial by combat. At best, that's him deciding that she is no longer his responsibility to protect. At worst, he is rather blithely okay with her dying. That arc will probably carry on for some time yet, and he will see her in a very different light soon. She already reminds him of the Mad King who he killed, and is wondering whether she might order the killing of their Uncle Kevin. When sons were killing fathers, what was there to stop a niece from ordering an uncle slain? An inconvenient uncle who knows too much, he thinks. As we know, Kevin is killed a bit later. Not by her, but will Jaime believe that? Some people counter this by arguing that Jaime can't be the Valonqar because, having only one hand, he can't wrap his hands around her neck, as per the prophecy. Personally, I don't think this is as devastating a counter-argument as some do. He could wrap his left hand and gold hand around her neck, or perhaps remember that chain of hands that Tyrion strangled Shae with? Cersei makes a point of saving that. And there is a perhaps foreshadowy moment when Jaime even thinks that he would happily have strangled the woman with her seashell necklace. He was thinking about Sibel Spicer, not Cersei, but the thought has crossed his mind to strangle a woman with a necklace, and not just any woman, but Sibel Spicer, the mother of a queen. And when you add in the early imagery of Jaime wrestling with Cersei, and Bran thought as he spied on them in that tower right at the start of the story, hurting her, and the idea that perhaps this is a remnant of George R. R. Martin's original idea for Jaime being a character who killed many family members in his rise to power, I think we can construct a strong case that Jaime is the most likely candidate that we have. There certainly is a strong argument that the logical end to his character arc is to finally and fatally end his link to Cersei and die alongside her. By then, their children together will probably all be dead, and she will probably have taken on a new lover and committed more atrocities in her vendetta against Marjorie Tyrell and the High Sparrow and Tyrion. And what if she is the woman with hands alive with pale white fire standing next to Euron in Aeron's vision? That would certainly link in with the idea of her having a pale white throat, as per Maggie the Frog's prophecy. Perhaps Jaime killing her isn't an act of anger or vengeance or malice, but pity for what she has become, and an echo of his killing of the Mad King all those years ago to save the world from what she will do if left alive. Perhaps. It's all a long way in the future of the story. Jaime and Cersei both have a way to go before they meet again, let alone anything else, and George R. R. Martin has plenty of time to steer the story in other directions if he wishes, which is to say that there's a good chance that Cersei won't die for a little while yet in the story. Personally, I fully expect Cersei to survive the Winds of Winter, not meeting her end until nearer the end of A Dream of Spring, which gives us a good while to speculate on the identity of the Valonqar, and for George R. R. Martin to give us more clues. Until then, there remains a long list of potential Valonqars, with Jaime, I think, at the head of that list. But what do you think? Who do you think is the Valonqar, and why? Let me know in the comments below. If you'd like more videos like this, diving deep into the world of Ice and Fire, there's a playlist appearing now on the left of the screen. Or to support this channel, thank you. There's a link to my Patreon page on the right of your screen. That's all for this time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.